Park Do-hyun stared out the window of the space elevator, watching Earth grow smaller below him. His hands were sweating as he gripped the tablet containing his diplomatic papers. At 24, he was the youngest human ever assigned to the Stellar Empire's capital world, and he couldn't shake the feeling that there had been some mistake. Nervous kid. Admiral Kim Ta-woo's deep voice made Do-hyun jump. The older man smiled, his weathered face showing gentle amusement. "Don't be. We picked you for a reason." "But why me, sir?" Do-hyun asked, straightening his dark blue Earth Alliance uniform. "There are hundreds of better diplomats." The admiral leaned against the window, looking at the stars above them. "Better educated, maybe. More experienced, certainly. But none of them have your special talent." Do-hyun frowned. He knew what the admiral meant. 3 months ago, he had solved a trade dispute with the Mercurian colonies by suggesting they trade singing crystals for water purifiers, an idea so simple that everyone had overlooked it. Last month, he had prevented a fight between two alien species by pointing out they were arguing over different words that sounded the same in their languages. "I just noticed things," Do-hyun said quietly. "Anyone could do it." "But they don't," Ta-woo replied. "And that's why you're going to the Imperial Palace." The space elevator reached its destination, the massive Earth Alliance station that would connect them to the Imperial transport ship. Do-hyun gathered his bags, trying to remember everything he had learned about Imperial etiquette. Don't look at the nobles' faces unless invited. Always bow at exactly 45 degrees. Never eat before the highest-ranking person at the table starts. The Imperial ship was beautiful, all sweeping silver curves and soft blue lights. A tall Imperial officer met them at the dock. Her silver skin gleamed under the lights as she bowed precisely. "Welcome, Diplomat Park, Admiral Kim. I am Officer Lee Yoon-ji. I will be your guide to the capital." Her universal translator made her words sound perfect, but Do-hyun could see her throat scales rippling, a sign of stress in her species. "Thank you for your welcome," Do-hyun replied in careful Imperial standard, without using his translator. Yoon-ji's scales settled slightly, and he saw approval in her large dark eyes. As they walked through the ship's corridors, Do-hyun noticed small things. The way the Imperial crew watched him when they thought he wasn't looking. How there were more guards than usual for a diplomatic transport. The slight tremor in Officer Lee's hands when she mentioned the Imperial Palace. Something was wrong. This wasn't a normal diplomatic assignment. In his quarters, Do-hyun unpacked his few belongings. His mother's lucky compass, his father's old paper books, real books, not digital ones, a small pot of his sister's favorite tea, little pieces of Earth to keep him company. A soft chime announced a message on his room's communication panel. It was from Admiral Kim. "Meeting in my quarters. Now." Do-hyun found the Admiral staring at a holographic star map. "Sir, you've noticed something's off," Ta-woo said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, sir. The security is too high. Officer Lee is nervous. And..." Do-hyun hesitated. "This ship is a royal-class transport. It's too fancy for a junior diplomat." The Admiral smiled. "And that's why we chose you." He waved his hand, and the star map changed to show the Imperial Palace. "The Empire is changing, Do-hyun. The old emperor died 3 months ago. His daughter, Princess Hae-yun, is next in line. But there are those who don't want to see her take the throne." "Why are you telling me this, sir?" "Because you're not just here as a diplomat. You're here to watch, to listen, to notice things that others miss." The Admiral's face grew serious. "The princess requested you specifically, though she's never met you. She saw the reports of how you solved the Mercurian crisis. She thinks you see things differently than others do." Do-hyun felt his stomach twist. "What exactly am I supposed to do?" "Your job, Do-hyun. Be a diplomat. Notice things. Solve problems." The Admiral put a hand on his shoulder. "And maybe, just maybe, help keep the peace between Earth and the greatest empire humanity has ever known." As Du Hyun left the admiral's quarters, his mind was racing. The princess had requested him. The princess who would become empress. The princess who held the fate of Earth Alliance in her hands. He looked out a nearby window at the stars streaking by. Somewhere ahead was the imperial capital, and whatever destiny waited for him there. Do Hyun straightened his uniform. He had a job to do. And Park Do Hyun had never failed at a job yet. The imperial palace was the most beautiful thing Do Hyun had ever seen. Its crystal towers seemed to float in the pink morning sky of the capital world. Gardens hung between the towers, full of plants from 1,000 worlds. Earth roses grew next to glowing flowers from distant stars. Do Hyun stood with the other diplomats in the grand hall, trying not to fidget. Today was Princess Hae-yun's first public appearance since her father's death. His job was simple: watch and report anything unusual to Admiral Kim. Nervous? A friendly voice asked. Do Hyun turned to see Officer Lee Yoon-ji. She looked different in her formal uniform, her silver scales polished to a mirror shine. A little, he admitted. I've never seen a princess before. Just remember your training, she said, and try not to trip. The great doors opened, and imperial guards marched in. Their armor changed colors like oil on water. Do Hyun noticed something odd. They were walking in a pattern he had never seen before. Why change the traditional formation? Then he saw her. Princess Hae-yun walked into the hall like sunlight breaking through clouds. Her formal robes shimmered with moving star patterns, and her dark hair was braided with threads of light. But what caught Do Hyun's attention was her eyes, sharp and alert, missing nothing. The ceremony began. Noble families came forward one by one to pledge loyalty to the future empress. Do Hyun watched everything, especially the things others ignored. The way some nobles' hands shook when they bowed. How others kept their eyes fixed on the princess too long. Then he saw it. A servant carrying drinks was walking wrong. His steps were too precise, too practiced, and his tray was tilted slightly, not enough to spill the drinks, but enough to keep one hand free. Without thinking, Do Hyun stepped forward and stumbled. He crashed into the servant, sending drinks flying everywhere. People jumped back, some laughing, some angry. I'm so sorry. Do Hyun bowed again and again. I'm not used to the gravity here yet. But as he helped clean up, he saw what he had been looking for, a tiny needle, almost invisible, that had fallen from the servant's sleeve. The guards must have seen it too, because they moved in smoothly, surrounding the servant. Princess Hae-yun raised her hand, and the hall fell silent. What is your name, Earth diplomat? Do Hyun bowed deeply. Park Do Hyun, Your Highness. Tell me, Diplomat Park, do you often have trouble with our gravity? He looked up and met her eyes. They were filled with intelligence and amusement. She knew. She had seen what he did. Sometimes, Your Highness, he said carefully. But I find that accidents can be educational. The princess's lips curved in a small smile. Indeed they can. She turned to the crowd. Let us continue the ceremony, though perhaps without more drinks. Later, in Admiral Kim's temporary office in the palace, Do Hyun gave his report. The assassin was good, he said. If I hadn't been watching for something wrong, I might have missed it. The admiral nodded. The guards found poison in all the drinks on his tray, enough to kill everyone who drank them. He looked at Do Hyun closely. How did you know? Little things. His walk was too perfect, like he practiced it hundreds of times. Real servants are more relaxed, and he kept his tray tilted to keep one hand ready. Good work. The admiral smiled. Though I hear you made quite a mess. Do Hyun blushed. It seemed better than shouting assassin in a crowded room. A soft chime interrupted them. A message appeared on the admiral's screen, marked with the royal seal. As he read it, his eyebrows rose higher and higher. Well, he said finally, it seems you made an impression. The princess has requested that you be assigned as her personal Earth liaison. Do Hyun's mouth fell open. But I'm just a junior diplomat. Not anymore. The admiral handed him a data chip. These are your new credentials. You start tomorrow. He grinned. Try not to spill anything else on your first day. That night, Do Hyun stood on his balcony, looking at the 3 moons in the alien sky. Everything was happening so fast. First the special assignment, now this promotion. He remembered the princess's eyes, how they had seen right through his clumsy act. She was smart, dangerously smart. And for some reason, she wanted him close by. Do Hyun had a feeling his life was about to become much more complicated. 2 weeks had passed since Do Hyun became the princess's Earth liaison. He spent his days attending meetings, writing reports, and trying to understand the complex web of imperial politics. Princess Hyun rarely spoke to him directly, but he often felt her watching him. One morning, Officer Lee rushed into his office. Turn on the news feed. Now. Do Hyun activated his desk screen. Princess Hyun stood before the Imperial Council, her face calm but determined. It is time, she was saying, for me to choose a consort. The council chamber erupted in excitement. Every noble family had been pushing their sons forward as potential matches for months. My choice will surprise you, Hyun continued. But it is final. She paused, and Do Hyun could swear she was looking directly at the camera. I choose Park Do Hyun of Earth. Do Hyun's cup fell from his hand, spilling tea across his desk. What? Officer Lee's scales had turned pale silver, a sign of shock in her species. This is unprecedented. The screen showed chaos in the council chamber. Nobles were shouting, some standing in protest. Hyun raised her hand, and silence fell. My father taught me that an empire must adapt or die. Earth has shown us new ways of thinking, new ways of solving problems. Their diplomatic corps has prevented 3 wars in the past year alone. They see patterns we miss, find solutions we overlook. She smiled. And one Earth diplomat, in particular, has proven this repeatedly. The door burst open, and Admiral Kim rushed in. Do Hyun, we need to move. Now. Move where? Why? Do Hyun was still staring at the screen in shock. Because half the noble houses will try to kill you before sunset. The admiral grabbed his arm. And the other half will try to kidnap you to gain leverage over the princess. They hurried through the palace corridors, guards falling in around them. Do Hyun's mind was spinning. This can't be happening. I'm not. I can't be. Can't be what? A familiar voice asked. Princess Hyun stepped out from a side passage, flanked by her personal guards. In simple day robes, she looked younger, more human. A suitable consort. Do Hyun bowed deeply. Your Highness, I'm just a junior diplomat. I don't know anything about being a royal consort. You know how to see what others miss, she said softly. You know how to solve problems in new ways. And you know how to act quickly when it matters. She stepped closer. Like when you stopped that assassin. That was just observation and quick thinking. Exactly. Hyun smiled. That's what the Empire needs. What I need. Her face grew serious. But you should know, this isn't just about politics. I've been watching you, Do Hyun. How you treat the servants with kindness. How you solve that trade dispute between rival houses by finding common ground. How you remember everyone's names, even the garden workers. A distant explosion shook the corridor. Admiral Kim grabbed his communicator. The outer defenses are under attack. 3 noble houses have declared their opposition to the selection. Hyun nodded as if she'd expected this. Do Hyun, I'm giving you a choice. You can leave now, return to Earth with full diplomatic immunity and protection. Or you can stay, face the trials that come with being my chosen consort, and help me build a better empire. She held out her hand. What do you choose? Do Hyun looked at her offered hand. He thought about his quiet life on Earth, his simple diplomatic duties. Then he thought about all he'd seen in the Empire, the problems that needed solving, the changes that needed to happen. He took her hand. "I choose to stay, Your Highness." "He-Yun," she corrected. "If you're going to be my consort, you should use my name." Another explosion rocked the palace. Admiral Kim was barking orders into his communicator. Officer Lee's scales had shifted to battle red. "First," Du-Hyun said, "we should probably deal with the people trying to kill me." He-Yun laughed, a sound like silver bells. "See, you already know how to prioritize." She pressed a crystal into his hand. "This marks you as my chosen one. Don't lose it." As guards rushed them toward the secure bunkers deep beneath the palace, Du-Hyun clutched the crystal. His life had just become more complicated than he could have ever imagined. But looking at He-Yun's determined face as she coordinated the palace defense, he couldn't bring himself to regret his choice. The palace bunker was nothing like Du-Hyun had expected. Instead of a dark, military room, it was a comfortable command center with soft lights and comfortable chairs. Princess He-Yun sat at a large desk, watching multiple screens showing the chaos above. "3 more noble houses have joined the protest," Officer Lee reported, her scales shifting between worry green and anger red. "They're calling humans genetically inferior and demanding the selection be canceled." Do-Hyun tried not to show how much those words hurt. He-Yun noticed anyway. "They fear what they don't understand," she said softly. Then her face hardened. "Show me the protest leaders." A screen lit up showing 5 imperial nobles. Do-Hyun leaned forward, noticing something odd about their ceremonial robes. "Those patterns. I've seen them before." Admiral Kim looked interested. "Where?" "In the Earth Alliance historical archives. They're similar to markings on ships that attacked Earth colonies 300 years ago." Do-Hyun pulled up the images on his tablet. "See. The same curved lines, the same color scheme." He-Yun smiled grimly. "And now you understand why I chose you." She pressed a button, and a new image appeared. A star map showing Earth and its colonies. Those nobles belong to houses that have been secretly working with the Shadowed Ones. The Shadowed Ones. Do-Hyun felt cold. Every human knew that name. The mysterious aliens who had nearly destroyed Earth's first colonies, who had disappeared as suddenly as they had appeared. "They never left," Admiral Kim said quietly. "They just found new allies. Noble houses who didn't want Earth joining the galactic community." "But why?" Do-Hyun asked. "Because humans are unpredictable," He-Hyun answered. "You think differently, solve problems in ways we never consider, like stopping an assassin by pretending to trip." She smiled at him. "The Shadowed Ones and their allies prefer order, control, predictability. Humans threaten that." A guard rushed in. "Your Highness, the protesters are demanding to see you. They say if you don't appear, they'll take it as proof you've been influenced by human mind control." Do-Hyun almost laughed at how ridiculous that sounded, but He-Yun's face was serious. "They're trying to force a confrontation," she said. "If I appear, they might try to kill me. If I don't, they'll use it to turn more houses against us." "Then let me go," Do-Hyun said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at him. "Not you. Me. Let me talk to them." "That's too dangerous," Officer Lee protested. But He-Yun was watching Do-Hyun with interest. "You have an idea." He nodded. "Their whole argument is that humans are inferior, right? So let me prove them wrong. Not with strength or technology, but with words, with understanding." Admiral Kim stroked his chin thoughtfully. "It could work. If he can show the other houses that humans aren't what the Shadowed Ones claim." "You could be killed," He-Yun said quietly. Do-Hyun took her hand. "I know, but you chose me for a reason. Let me prove you were right." After a long moment, she nodded. "Very well, but not alone." She turned to Officer Lee. "Gather the neutral house's representatives. They should witness this." 20 minutes later, Do-Hyun stood in the palace's great courtyard. Angry nobles faced him from one side, neutral houses watched from another, and news cameras broadcast everything across the empire. "You dare to stand where our princes should stand," one noble shouted. Du Hyun looked at the noble's robe, at those familiar curved patterns. "I stand where Princess Haeyun asked me to stand, just as you stand where the Shadowed Ones ask you to stand." The crowd went silent. The noble's face paled. 300 years ago, the Shadowed Ones tried to destroy human colonies. Du Hyun continued, his voice carrying across the courtyard. "They failed because they didn't understand us. Just as you fail to understand us now. We're not inferior. We're different. And different isn't bad. Different is how the Empire grew strong, taking the best from each world it embraced." He saw uncertainty in some faces now, seeds of doubt being planted. "You fear us because we're unpredictable," he said. "But that unpredictability saved your princess from an assassin. That human creativity has prevented 3 wars this year alone. We don't want to change the Empire. We want to help it grow stronger." In her bunker, watching the screens, Haeyun smiled. Du Hyun was doing exactly what she'd known he would do, turning his enemies' fears into hope, their hatred into understanding. The battle wasn't over. But the first victory had been won with words, not weapons. Just as she'd planned. Du Hyun stood before the ancient trial gates, his heart pounding. The massive doors were covered in moving patterns that hurt his eyes if he looked at them too long. Every royal consort in imperial history had passed through these gates. Many had not come back. The trials test more than strength. Haeyun had told him the night before, during one of their secret meetings. They test who you truly are. Now, facing those gates, Du Hyun remembered her words. He wore a simple white training suit, the crystal Haeyun had given him hanging from his neck. Admiral Kim and Officer Lee stood with the other witnesses, their faces worried. The gates opened silently, revealing only darkness inside. Du Hyun took a deep breath and walked in. Light flooded his vision. He stood in what looked like a combat arena, but something felt wrong about it. The walls seemed to shift when he wasn't looking directly at them. "First trial. Combat," a voice announced. "Defeat your opponent." A figure stepped out of the wall. An Imperial warrior in full battle armor. Du Hyun's heart sank. He had basic combat training, but nothing that could match an Imperial warrior's strength and speed. The warrior attacked. Du Hyun dodged, barely avoiding a punch that cracked the floor. He couldn't win this fight with strength. But maybe. "Why are you attacking me?" he asked, dodging another blow. The warrior paused for a fraction of a second. Du Hyun kept talking. "The trials test who I am, right? So what does beating you in combat prove? That I'm strong, or that I can think of better solutions?" The warrior stopped completely. Then it nodded and faded away. "First trial passed," the voice announced, understanding over force. The room shifted. Now Du Hyun stood in what looked like a garden. Beautiful flowers bloomed everywhere, their sweet smell filling the air. Second trial. Survival. Find the path. Du Hyun looked closer at the flowers. Some were from Earth, roses, lilies, orchids. Others were imperial blooms he'd seen in the palace gardens. And some. He smiled. "These flowers aren't real. This whole garden is an illusion." He walked forward confidently, ignoring what his eyes told him about paths and walls. Instead, he followed the slight changes in temperature on his skin that showed where the real path was. Second trial passed. Truth over illusion. The next room was empty except for a single screen showing complicated imperial mathematics. Third trial. Knowledge. Solve the equation. Du Hyun stared at the screen. The math was far beyond him. But then he noticed something. The equation was similar to one he'd seen in the palace library, about calculating safe jump points for spaceships. He typed into the screen. "This equation has no solution because it's asking the wrong question. It's not about where the ship can jump to, it's about where it should jump to. That needs more than math. It needs judgment." Third trial passed. Wisdom over knowledge. The final room was the strangest. It was filled with mirrors, each showing Do-hyun differently. In one he wore imperial robes and looked like a noble. In another he was in Earth Alliance military uniform. In others he was rich, powerful, feared. Final trial. Identity. Choose your reflection. Do-hyun looked at each mirror carefully. Then he turned his back on all of them. I choose to be myself, he said clearly, not what others want to see in me. Final trial passed. Truth to self over power. Light flashed, and Do-hyun found himself back outside the gates. The witnesses were staring at him in shock. He had been inside for less than an hour. The shortest trial time in imperial history. Hae-yun stepped forward, her face glowing with pride. You did it exactly as I knew you would. You knew what the trials would be. She smiled. I knew they would test your true strength, not your muscles or your knowledge, but your heart, your ability to find new answers to old questions. Admiral Kim was grinning. The nobles can't argue now. You passed the same trials their ancestors did. They'll still try to stop us, Hae-yun said, taking Do-hyun's hand. But now everyone knows you're worthy of being my consort. Do-hyun squeezed her hand. I had help. You prepared me without me even knowing it. All those talks about imperial history, about different ways of solving problems. Of course I did. Her eyes sparkled. That's what partners do. They help each other grow stronger. Looking at their joined hands, Do-hyun realized something important. He wasn't just passing these tests for himself anymore. He was passing them for both of them, for their shared future, for the chance to make the empire better. The hard part wasn't over, but now he knew he could face whatever came next. Life in the imperial palace had changed for Do-hyun. After passing the trials, more people showed him respect. Common people especially liked him, saying he gave them hope that anyone could rise high through merit alone. But not everyone was happy. In just 1 week, there had been 3 attempts on his life. You're too relaxed about this, Officer Lee scolded him one morning, her scales flickering with worry green. That food taster almost died testing your breakfast. I know, Do-hyun said. He was reading reports on his tablet. That's why I've been studying imperial cooking traditions. Did you know that noble houses all use different spice combinations, like signatures? What does that have to do with keeping you alive? He smiled. The poison in my breakfast used spices from House Min. They were trying to make it look like House Park did it. But House Park never uses those spices together. It's against their traditions. Officer Lee's scales turned surprise blue. You caught them through cooking styles. Humans are good at seeing patterns, he said, especially in things others take for granted. Later that day, Do-hyun walked in the public gardens with Hae-yun. Guards watched from a distance as common people bowed and took pictures. The people love you, Hae-yun said softly. You're different from other nobles. You talk to them. Remember their names. I'm not a noble, he reminded her. I'm just. A child's scream cut him off. Without thinking, Do-hyun grabbed Hae-yun and pulled her down behind a fountain. A beam of energy burned through the air where they had been standing. Sniper, the guards shouted. People ran for cover. But Do-hyun was watching the fountain water. Look at the ripples, he said calmly. Hae-yun followed his gaze. The water rippled in a strange pattern, disturbed by something they couldn't see. Active camouflage, Do-hyun said. The assassin is using a stealth suit, but they didn't think about how it would affect the water. He picked up a handful of flower petals from the ground and threw them into the air. The petals stuck to an invisible shape, outlining a person. The guards moved in quickly. That evening, in Hae-yun's private study, Admiral Kim gave his report. The assassin was using advanced technology that only the Shadowed Ones have. They're getting desperate, Hae-yun said. She looked at Do-hyun with worry in her eyes. Maybe we should postpone the public ceremonies. No, Do-hyun said firmly. That's what they want. To make us hide. To make people fear change. He stood and walked to the window. But I have an idea. The next day, Du Hyun did something no royal consort had ever done. He went to the public markets alone. Well, not completely alone. Officer Lee followed him in civilian clothes, and he knew guards watched from hidden places. But to everyone else, he looked unprotected. "They'll try to kill you," Officer Lee had warned. "I count on it," he'd answered. In the market, Du Hyun talked with sellers, tasted local food, and bought small gifts. People gathered around him, drawn by his friendly manner and simple ways. Then he felt it, a slight tingle in the air that reminded him of Earth's old electric fences. Someone was powering up an energy weapon. Everyone. He called out cheerfully, "I want to show you an Earth custom." He pulled out a bag of metallic confetti. "When we celebrate, we throw these in the air." He tossed the confetti up just as the assassin fired. The metal pieces disrupted the energy beam, making it visible. More importantly, they revealed 3 assassins in stealth suits. The crowd gasped. Palace guards appeared instantly. But the common people moved first, surrounding the assassins with angry shouts. Nobody escaped. "You used the crowd as protection," Hae-yeon said later, both impressed and worried. "That was risky." "I used the truth as protection," Du Hyun corrected. "Now everyone has seen the Shadowed One's agents try to kill me in public. No one can deny they're real." Hae-yeon touched his face gently. "You could have died." "Worth the risk," he said, "because now the common people know they have power too. That they can help change the empire." She smiled and leaned closer. "You're changing everything, Du Hyun. Our traditions, our thinking, even how we see ourselves. Good changes. The best kind," she whispered, and kissed him. Du Hyun sat in the palace library late at night, surrounded by old books and glowing data screens. For weeks, he had been gathering information, following patterns that others had missed. Now, finally, everything made sense. "You should be sleeping," Hae-yeon said, walking in quietly. She wore simple night robes, her hair free of its usual formal styling. "I found something," Du Hyun said. "Look at these trade records from the last 100 years." Hae-yeon sat beside him, looking at the screens. "These show shipping routes between noble houses." "Yes, but look at the patterns." Du Hyun pointed to different spots. Every time Earth tried to join the empire in the past, these same houses suddenly got rich. They received huge payments from hidden accounts. The Shadowed Ones were paying them, Hae-yeon said slowly. "To keep Earth out, yes. But that's not all." Du Hyun pulled up more records. These houses all had the same thing happen 300 years ago, when the Shadowed Ones first attacked Earth colonies. Officer Lee walked in, carrying more data crystals. Her scales were excitement purple. "I found those old military reports you asked for." Do Hyun quickly loaded the crystals. "Look at this. Every time the Shadowed Ones attacked Earth, Imperial ships from these same houses were seen nearby. But the records were changed to hide it." Hae-yeon's face grew dark with anger. "They've been working together all this time, the Shadowed Ones and these noble houses." "But why?" Officer Lee asked. "What do they gain?" "Control," Du Hyun said simply. "The Shadowed Ones don't just hate humans because we're different. They hate us because we make others different too." He looked at Hae-yeon. "Like how you started thinking differently after studying Earth's diplomatic methods." Hae-yeon nodded slowly. "They fear change. And humans bring change wherever they go." "Exactly. These noble houses," Du Hyun brought up their family trees. "They've ruled the same way for thousands of years. They don't want new ideas. They don't want people thinking differently. Like how common people started standing up to assassins in the market," Officer Lee said, understanding. "Or how other houses are starting to question old traditions," Hae-yeon added. A quiet alarm beeped on Du Hyun's tablet. He had set up special programs to watch for unusual activities. "Look at this. Those same houses are moving ships right now." Big ones. Armed ones. He-Yun leaned forward. Where are they going? That's the scary part. Do-Hyun showed them the projected course. They're heading toward Earth. They're going to attack. Officer Lee's scales turned fear-white. No, He-Yun said grimly. They're going to try to start a war. Make it look like Earth attacked first. Do-Hyun nodded. They know they're losing power here in the Empire. More houses support us every day. This is their last chance to stop Earth from fully joining the Empire. He-Yun stood up, her face set with determination. We have proof now. We can show everyone what they've been doing. It's not that simple, Do-Hyun said. These records are complicated. Most people won't understand them. We need something clear, something everyone can see. Like what? Do-Hyun smiled. It was the same smile he had worn before stopping the assassins in the market. Like catching them in the act. I have a plan, but it's dangerous. All your plans are dangerous, Officer Lee said, but her scales were showing trust gold. This one more than most, Do-Hyun admitted. We need to let them think their plan is working. Let them get close to Earth. And then, He-Yun asked, then we spring a trap 300 years in the making. He showed them another set of records. Earth has been preparing for the Shadowed Ones to return. We have proof they've been working with these houses. If we can catch them together, the whole Empire will see the truth, He-Yun finished. But we'll need help, Do-Hyun said, from people in places high and low. Noble houses who trust us, common people who believe in change. He-Yun took his hand. Then we'll get help. You've shown everyone a new way forward. Now they'll help us protect it. Do-Hyun squeezed her hand, looking at the star maps showing Earth and the Empire. Soon, everything would change. The only question was, would it change for better or worse? The answer, he knew, would depend on how well humans and Imperials could work together. Just like him and He-Yun. The Imperial Palace was quiet. Too quiet. Do-Hyun stood at a window, watching the three moons rise. Behind him, He-Yun sat at her command desk, coordinating their forces. The enemy ships are almost at Earth. Admiral Kim reported through the comm system. Our fleet is in position, waiting for your signal. And our friends in the lower city? Do-Hyun asked. Officer Lee's voice came through, her tone excited. Ready. Every market seller, every worker, every common person who supports you is watching and waiting. He-Yun smiled. Then it's time. Do-Hyun. He nodded and pressed a button on his tablet. Throughout the palace, hidden cameras activated. Every screen in the Empire would soon show what happened here. The doors burst open. Armed nobles rushed in, led by Lord Min, one of their greatest enemies. Behind them came tall, shadowy figures that seemed to bend light around them, the Shadowed Ones themselves. Seize them, Lord Min shouted. The human has corrupted our princess's mind. We must. Must what? He-Yun asked calmly. Must stop change. Must keep power only in your hands. Must keep the Empire pure. Lord Min's face was red with anger. This human thinks he can change thousands of years of tradition. No, Do-Hyun said. Your traditions changed long ago, when you first worked with the Shadowed Ones. When you helped them attack Earth colonies, when you took their bribes, the shadowy figures moved forward. Their voices sounded like whispers in the dark. The human knows too much. He must die. I know exactly enough, Do-Hyun said. He pressed another button on his tablet. Hidden panels in the walls opened, revealing dozens of cameras and sensors. And now, everyone knows. Screens around the room lit up, showing live feeds from across the Empire. Common people were surrounding noble houses' estates. Loyal Imperial ships were moving to block the rebel fleet near Earth. In the markets, people watched the scene unfolding in the palace. You're broadcasting this. Lord Min's face went pale. You can't. We are, He-Yun said. Every word, every action. The whole Empire can see who really tries to keep us pure. She stood, her royal robes shimmering. They can see who deals with enemies in shadows. The shadowed ones moved with incredible speed, but Du Hyun was ready. He threw small devices that Officer Lee had helped him prepare. Bright light filled the room, stripping away the aliens' camouflage. For the first time, the Empire saw them clearly. Tall, dark creatures with too many eyes. "Now, Admiral," Du Hyun called. The palace defenses activated, but not the old ones. New systems, designed by human and Imperial engineers working together, created energy fields that trapped the attackers. "This is what we feared," the shadowed ones hissed. "Humans change everything they touch. They make others see new ways, think new thoughts." "Yes," Hyun said proudly. "That's exactly why I chose Du Hyun. Because sometimes change is what we need most." Through the screens, they could see the coup failing everywhere. Common people helped loyal guards arrest rebel nobles. The enemy fleet near Earth found itself surrounded by ships from Earth Alliance and loyal Imperial houses. "It's over," Du Hyun said to Lord Min. "Your hidden allies are exposed. Your plans are revealed. The Empire can see the truth." Lord Min looked broken. "We only wanted to keep things the same. To keep our power." "Power shouldn't come from keeping things the same," Hyun said. "It should come from making things better." She took Du Hyun's hand. "From being willing to change when change is needed." The palace guards came to take the rebels away. The shadowed ones would face Imperial justice. Their long manipulation of noble houses finally ended. As the excitement died down, Hyun turned to Du Hyun. "You risked everything on this plan. What if it had failed?" "It couldn't fail," he said simply, "because it didn't depend on just me or just you. It depended on everyone who wants a better empire. Humans, Imperials, nobles, common people, all working together." She touched his face gently. "You've shown us all a new way forward." "No," he corrected her. "We showed them. Together." Outside the palace, the three moons shone down on celebrations in the streets. Change had come to the Empire at last, and it had come not through force, but through understanding, through seeing things differently, through working together, just as Du Hyun had always known it would. 3 months after the failed coup, the Imperial Palace was transformed. The once quiet halls now buzzed with activity as people from all parts of the Empire came to share ideas and solve problems together. Do Hyun stood in his favorite spot by the garden window, watching students from Earth universities talk with Imperial scholars. His simple diplomatic uniform had been replaced by formal robes that combined Earth and Imperial styles, just as he had helped combine Earth and Imperial ways of thinking. "Still watching everyone?" Hyun asked, joining him. She wore her crown today, but her formal robes now included patterns inspired by Earth's oceans. "Old habits," he smiled. "But look how different things are now." In the garden, noble children played with common children, learning each other's games. Imperial guards trained with Earth Alliance officers, sharing techniques. Market sellers set up stalls right outside the palace gates, something unthinkable just months ago. Officer Lee approached them, her scales showing happy gold colors. "The first group of human students has completed their Imperial Guard training," she reported. "They're already thinking of new ways to improve our security systems." "Of course they are," Hyun said proudly. "That's what humans do best, find new ways to solve old problems." Admiral Kim joined them, looking pleased. "The combined fleet exercises are going well. Earth ships and Imperial ships working together, learning from each other. Even the older noble houses are starting to see the benefits." Do Hyun nodded. After the coup, many noble houses had worried they would lose everything. Instead, they found that sharing power made everyone stronger. Their knowledge of tradition combined with new ideas created better solutions than either side could make alone. "It's time," Hyun said softly. "Are you ready?" Do Hyun took a deep breath. Today was their official union ceremony, where he would formally become Hyun's consort and help her lead the empire into its new age. The great hall was packed with people from every part of the empire. Nobles stood next to common people. Earth diplomats chatted with imperial scholars. Even some reformed houses that had once opposed them were there, ready to support the new way. As they walked to the ceremony platform, Du Hyun remembered his first day in the palace, how scared he had been, how unsure. Now he walked confidently, knowing his strength came not from power or position, but from understanding and bringing people together. A year ago, Hyun began, addressing the crowd. I chose a consort whom many thought was unsuitable, a human whom many believed could never understand our ways. She smiled at Du Hyun. They were right about one thing. He didn't just understand our old ways. He helped us find better new ones. Do Hyun stepped forward. Change isn't easy, he said, but when we face it together, when we combine the wisdom of the past with new ideas for the future, we all become stronger. The ceremony mixed old and new traditions. They exchanged traditional imperial vows, but added earth customs too. When Hyun placed the consort's crown on Do Hyun's head, it was a new design that represented both cultures. Later, at the celebration, Do Hyun danced with Hyun, while earth music played alongside imperial songs. He saw Officer Lee teaching earth children how to read her scale colors, while Admiral Kim explained earth jokes to laughing imperial nobles. Happy? Hyun asked as they danced. More than I ever thought possible, he answered. When you first chose me, I thought you were making a mistake. I chose exactly right, she said. I chose someone who could see things differently, who could help us all see things differently. She touched the crystal she had given him so long ago, now part of his formal regalia. Someone who could show us that change isn't something to fear, but something to welcome. Do Hyun looked around at their new empire. Earth ships now protected imperial worlds. Imperial technology helped Earth colonies grow. People from both cultures worked together, learned together, grew together. What comes next? He asked. Hyun's eyes sparkled. More changes, more challenges, more chances to show how humans and Imperials can work together. She squeezed his hand. But whatever comes, we'll face it the way we've faced everything else. Together, Do Hyun finished. Above them, the three moons shone down on an empire transformed. Not by force or fear, but by understanding and hope. By seeing the best in different ways of thinking. By proving that sometimes the best traditions are the new ones you make together. The empire had its princess. She had chosen her consort. And neither of them would ever let the other go.